What's up, Mafia? You know who it is. It's your guy Moose hanging out with you on today's episode of the Bills Breakdown by Chat Sports. Now, today, another Bills draft episode, but not from me this time, from the guys who do it for a living. Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper just yesterday dropped brand new mock drafts, and you will not believe who they picked at number 30 for the Buffalo Bills. Now, before we get into what they did, we need to ask you to do something for us. Call this a little bit of your homework for today. Send this to a Bills fan who has never seen a Bills breakdown video. We are trying to make this the premier destination for all things Buffalo Bills related. And remember what I said yesterday on yesterday's episode. The more that we get those subs, the more likes that you hit, the more chances we get to go live for that 2025 NFL draft. So do me a favor, send this to a Bills fan, hit the thumbs up button, and hit subscribe, and lock us in. All right, so we do have 10 draft picks in this year's draft, with round one, a couple of round twos, a couple of round fours, and then the majority of our picks come in round 5 and round 6. Now, again, this draft that Kiper and Jeremiah came out with, it's only a round 1 mock. So they're not necessarily going to give us the entirety of all 7 rounds. It's just going to be what they have in round 1. So let's start with Mel Kiper, the big head honcho himself. He's got Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, and Shurmur Sanders going 1, 2, and 3, with Travis Hunter going to New England in 4. Then he got Mason Graham, Ashton Jeanty going to the Vegas Raiders at 6, and then Tyler Warren at 7. And then 9 through 12, you've got these guys right here. Mykel Williams falling to the Bears. Armin Membu, who is a growing offensive tackle prospect, going to the San Francisco 49ers. Will Campbell going to the Dolphins. Mike Green, who is one of the top performing edge rushers in the combine. He's going to the Falcons at 15. And then you've got 17 through 20 looking like this. Teteroa McMillan has been sliding off of a lot of draft boards. That was surprising to me. Picks 21 through 24, Matthew Golden, Mika Ibuka going to the Packers, Jahdae Barron going to the Minnesota Vikings. He was one of the Bills draft targets that I have on my board at least. And then you get to the later rounds, Josh Simmons, Ray Thomas. You've got Malachi Starks and James Pierce Jr. going to the Lions. Now here's where it gets interesting. Take a look at number 29, Maxwell Hairston. And to be completely transparent with you, I was like, oh, I wanted Hairston because he is such an explosive athlete. Ran a 4.29 at the combine, and I really, really want him in a Bills uniform. But in Kiper's mock draft, he falls to the Washington Commanders 1 pick before we do. So where does that leave the Bills? Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. Now, we're going to talk about Grant here in just a second, but then the round 1 wraps up with Calvin Banks going to the Chiefs and Walter Nolen, who I previously highlighted in another video, going to the Eagles at 32. Now, again, when I look at this mock draft and I see Kenneth Grant's name, the first thing that I think of is absolute immediate need, right? He's a nose tackle. He's a big-bodied, raw, athletic prospect. Now, truth be told, he has to get better with his hands. He's got to develop more of a skill game on the defensive line. But when it comes to raw strength and raw power, he can compete with the best of them. That's why he's going to be a first-round pick. And if you remember a couple of years ago, he was a part of that Michigan national championship team where that defense saw, what, was it like 12 or 13 players go into the draft the next season? I mean, that defense was studly under Jim Harbaugh that last year in Michigan. So Grant seems like a decent pick here at 30, according to Mel Kiper. Now, as we get a little bit further on, we're going to head into Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft, and he's a little bit different than Kiper. In fact, I like Daniel Jeremiah's draft better than I liked Kiper, so let's see what his first 4 picks are. Cam Ward, Abdul Carter, Shurmur Sanders, very similar to what Kiper had. Then he's got Jalen Walker, Ashton Jeanty, and Armin Membu this time sliding up to 7 for the Jets, with Mason Graham going to the Carolina Panthers. 9 through 12, you can see Jahdae Barron goes way up from 24 to 11 in Jeremiah's, where honestly I think he's going to be better suited in the top 15 picks. Then, of course, 13 through 16, you got Tyler Warren going to Indianapolis, Will Johnson going to the Falcons, and Gray Zabel going to the Cardinals, that offensive tackle from North Dakota State. Mike Green going to the Bengals, which they desperately need help on the defensive side. 21 through 24 kind of looks like this. Maxwell Hairston climbs even higher, goes to the Green Bay Packers, and I don't think he'll go that high, but somewhere between 24 and 30 is probably right where you're going to see him. He performed really well, like I said, at the Combine. 25 through 28, I mean, these are pretty decent picks. Calvin Banks going to the Texans. They need offensive line help like you wouldn't believe. And then here you go. Ray Thomas going to the Washington Commanders, a cornerback out of Florida State. So where does that leave Buffalo if they can't get Hairston and they can't get Jahdae Barron? Who is it? The same guy. That's correct. They both had Kenneth Grant going to the Bills at 30, and this is how Jeremiah's mock draft rounds out with 31 Josh Simmons and Shurmur Stewart at 32. So it's clear that they see something in Kenneth Grant that the Bills would probably want to target, and that is, like I said, a big-bodied nose tackle who's got raw athleticism and power and strength to plug up the hole on the defensive line. And to be completely honest with you, the more and more that I hear about Kenneth Grant's name, the more and more I'm intrigued about him. So let's take a look at his collegiate career over at Michigan. Last year, he was really good. He had 27 pressures. Now, all the analysts believe that he has to develop into a pass rusher, somebody that can, once his skill game gets better with his hand movements and his footwork, he can get after the quarterback better. But what he does already is very, very similar to what Walter Nolen does, who I mentioned in a previous video. And that is to stop the run, which is what the Bills need. So, yes, Grant's going to be an automatic and day one out of the gates, productive nose tackle. That's what you need for the Bills. Now, again, if you can develop him into a guy who can get you 5.5 to 7 sacks a year, you're looking at a Pro Bowler. That's the great thing. And the more and more, like I said, I hear about this kid's name, the more and more I'm like, man, should the Bills go after somebody like this? He played under a Hall of Fame head coach in Jim Harbaugh. He had great production in his collegiate career, was a national champion, and if you remember 2 days ago, like I said, I picked this guy in my round 1 pick, Walter Nolen. And to be completely honest with you, Grant is probably a better run stopper than Nolen is. Now, Nolen has higher upside to get after the quarterback, in my opinion, but we're splitting hairs at this point. So if you want the immediate run stopper, Grant's your pick. If you want someone that has higher upside and a better chance to develop into not only a run stopper, but an amazing defensive lineman, you're probably going to end up going with Walter Nolen. But here's what I'm going to ask you. You pick a player. Walter Nolen, type WN. Kenneth Grant, type KG. I'm still going to give my vote to Walter Nolen only because of his upside, but he's climbing this board for me. And it's not necessarily because Kiper and Jeremiah were on him, and saying, oh my God, we both picked him, so now Moose has to go and pick him as well. I still like Nolen, but Kenneth Grant's name has been floating around draft boards really, really recently as somebody who can climb into that first round. So I really like Kenneth Grant. Now, again, he didn't work out at the Combine, or maybe that was Walter Nolen. Either way, Kenneth Grant and Walter Nolen would be excellent fits for the Buffalo Bills at pick number 30. And here's what my mock draft looked like rounds 1 through 4. I did this in another video earlier this week. So I have Walter Nolen, Landon Jackson in the second round, as well as Darian Porter, Savion Williams, and Demetrius Knight going in the 4th round. And to make it kind of put a bow on everything, the Bills should be going D-line in round 1. If you're not going to go D-line, you've got to go corner. But D-line is where we definitely need to plug the most holes. And in free agency, we definitely addressed that, right? Larry Ogunjobi, we signed him, although he's not going to be playing for the first 6 games, went out and signed Joey Bosa. So we're making the right moves. Now as we get closer and closer to the draft, I think you're going to see an even bigger emphasis on solidifying the trenches, both with offensive line depth and defensive line depth. So go ahead and grade Mel's and Jeremiah's mock draft for me. Give me an A, give me a B, give me a C, D, or F. all in total, for the Bills pick, I'm going to give it a B just because there wasn't a lot of parity. If you gave me Grant and then you gave me Nolen, I probably would have told you it was an A, to be completely honest. But I'm going to give it a B for that reason because they both picked the same player. That's going to do it for us on today's episode of the Bills Breakdown here by Chat Sports. Remember, send this video to a fan that has never seen our content before. And make sure that you hit that like button and subscribe to help us grow and get to 3,000 subscribers. We're this close. Until next time, I'm Moose. Take care.